one of the frustrating things about this comment was that it was made in reply to a parliamentarian from the left wing who actually pressed her on the issue and wanted her to answer in the negative. But she didn't. She answered in the positive, and she made that statement. Is this also being taken into consideration at the moment, that this also was in reply to a question in China, or is the Chinese, especially social media sphere, interpreting it as an intentional provocation that came out of a deliberate plan to provoke?
Well, I think we need to look at the time sequence or the sequence of events. You may interpret the original statement as a reaction. It could be a setup, or it could be some kind of collaboration between the two. But being as it may, after that, there were numerous accounts and numerous situations that China has asked her to perhaps retract the statement, or she can restate the statement, but she has refused to do that. And with the diplomatic pressure first exerted in both Japan and in Beijing, as well as the follow-on travel advisories and the new military drills, live ammunition drills in the nearby territories, in the nearby ocean territory, maritime territories, all have indicated how serious and how severe the situation might be. But there is no retraction from her or from her party, and there seemingly has no changing of the position. So perhaps the original statement may be a setup, but the follow-on reactions, one after another, especially one after another waves, seem to be indicating that she is holding steadfast on this position.
Yes, that's certainly true, because there was as you said, no attempt even at walking something of this back, even after it got clear how severe it is being interpreted on the other side. One more thing is that a Chinese friend of mine told me, from a Chinese view, this is Japan inserting itself uselessly into a problem which is none of its problems. Do you also interpret it this way?
Well, certainly that's indicating what may happen across the Taiwan Strait. That you may have to take into account of what Taiwan, especially Lai Ching-te government, is doing. Within Taiwan, certainly the reaction is divided. One part is extremely welcoming and celebratory. The other part is worrying and feeling that this may cause huge problems in terms of our relationship across Taiwan Strait. Lai Ching-te has long taken the position that the heyday of Taiwan was those under Japanese rule, and his independence proposals would in some way count on U.S. and Japan military support should there be a Taiwan independence proclamation or movements toward that, and should there be a military aggression from PRC. So when Takaishi walked directly into this line, Lai Ching-te and his government and some of the people that supported them also taking the sort of royalist Japanese former colonist position, welcome this with jubilee. So it is not surprising that China would take this as a indirect support or maybe explicit support of a Taiwan independence movement or advocacy, because it is reacted and received in Taiwan just as that.
The situation is further complicated, in my view, by the relative silence of the United States, that is not trying to say like, please calm it down. The United States seems to be just, let it go, because obviously a worsening of relations between Tokyo and Beijing is in direct favor of Washington. How do you think the Chinese are factoring this one in to the response that they're giving now?
Well, if you go back to the origin of the peace constitution, quote unquote, and under Article 9, it is exactly or precisely to contain Japan from making such a move or statement or action in the sense that may urge the other side in Asia Pacific to move in a military escalation. So now, if this has been reacted with such a strong opposition, it is probably natural for PRC to expect US to make certain statement, but it didn't. And I think in recent years, starting from Biden era, the United States is gradually easing the restriction of Japanese military expansion. It is now accepting Japan not only as a military base for its most significant strategic assets like F-35, but also allowing Japan perhaps to come into the supply chain or the military supply chain of the overall US build-out. So perhaps it is interpreted as Japan is not acting in a vacuum, it's acting with a perhaps implicit understanding or even acknowledgement or even encouragement by the US in order to present a stronger military force to rebalance military powers in the East Pacific. Because we all know after the September 3rd, people now understand how strong PRC's military build-out has been, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. So perhaps dragging or pulling Japan into some kind of a rebalance, just like pulling South Korea into some kind of nuclear submarine build-out, would be to the best interest of the United States. It would strengthen its local allies without incurring greater military expenses. So all of this is factored in, and U.S. silence is probably interpreted as perhaps a understanding or silent encouragement, silent nudging of Japan moving in that direction.
大家好，我是主播周玉琴。很多的朋友告诉我们，太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌帮助了睡眠品质。有季节敏感、代谢困扰、关心异常细胞风险的好朋友呢，可以选择原版的太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌。它添加有超级食物羽衣甘蓝，健康再加分。而有睡眠困扰的朋友们，赶快选择蓝色包装这一款晚安加强版，绝对是更有感。每日克菲尔，时刻美好 ，Good Feel Good， 请上快点购为健康下单，而且要记得输入推荐代码，有额外的折扣优惠。太阳星全效克菲尔益生菌基础版、晚安加强版，新包装改版，内容不变，抽取更方便。要吃就吃最好的。